People, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown. It is the 1st of March. A few stories to get through around the world, so it should be some interesting stuff. But we'll start with the Nigerian elections, considered to be a bellwether election in Africa. They're over now with Bola Tinubu, who is a former governor of Lagos, has been declared the winner of the closest presidential elections since the return of democracy in 1999. There are bits of concern, of course, with opposition parties having called the vote a sham and have demanded a rerun. One of the reasons that Nigeria is a bellwether is because it's has one of the longer democracies in Africa, and if it can be shown to do a election without dodginess in it, then that has a chance of giving other African nations hope that democracy can work in their countries as well. Tinubu got 8.8 million votes, which is just over a third of the total, with the main rival from the People's Democratic Party getting 7 million votes, failing in his sixth attempt to become Nigeria's president. Just stop. I mean, you should stop after fucking 3, really. Trying 6 times to become president and failing. You should just get the hint, really, shouldn't you, at that point? Third place was Peter Obi with 6.1 million votes, and it was the most votes received by a third place since the democracy's return. Obi was backed by many of Nigeria's urban and educated middle classes. Tinubu largely run on his 8-year record as Lagos's governor from 2007, saying he had cleared up the state and increased government revenues. However, of course, critics have accused him of turning Lagos into his personal fiefdom by using his massive political influence to install his successor. He's also faced allegations of corruption and questions over his vast wealth. In the 90s, the US froze his assets, claiming probable links to a narcotics operation. He ended up reaching a settlement with US authorities whilst denying any wrongdoings. Others have concerns over the 7-year-old's age and health, with him looking sometimes frail in public. It's another thing. If you're 70, you shouldn't be allowed to run things. Right? It's no offense to old people, but let's have a fucking a leader of a country that we are quite sure is going to survive a particularly cold winter. Tuesday, opposition parties led by the PDP and Labour Party called for a rerun, citing alleged irregularities. That's the fucking word, you stupid prick. Irregularities in the conduct of polls and the coalition of results. The Electoral Commission has denied accusations it allowed the results to be tampered with. International observers, Christ, I'm not doing words well today. International observers and Nigeria's civil society groups also criticised the Electoral Commission for its lack of transparency and communication in transmitting results from the polling unit. Nigeria, of course, at the moment is battling a number of issues, with inflation being nearly 22% and unemployment being 33%, which is very bloody high, with oil production also stagnating. It's one of the biggest oil producers in Africa. I always think with oil producers, it's one of the problems that a lot of the massively rich countries in the Middle East will end up facing in a few years if we do really want to save the world from it being destroyed by fossil fuels and all of this, is they need a plan B if oil production doesn't work. If you put everything just in oil production and then the world decides we shouldn't be using oil because it's fucking dangerous and everyone's going to die, then we have to look, then these countries have to have a plan B. But you notice with a lot of countries, this isn't all, but a lot of countries, the idea of forward thinking isn't really something that leaders seem to do. As we'll see from the next story, with the National Audit Office, this is a story, of course, about the UK. The National Audit Office has warned the government that it risks failing to meet its decarbonisation goal of 2035 because it lacks a clear and comprehensive plan. The government had planned to release a plan in October, but excuses. The watchdog also found that generators were being paid up to £62 million a day to cut output when supply outstripped demand and could not be stored. One of the big problems that we have, which seems like it should be solvable, is that our capacity to store energy is quite low comparative to a number of our esteemed similar countries. And you would have thought at some point over the past 13 years we would have done something about it, but what you gonna do? Pay people 62 million fucking pounds a day to get rid of it? That's what we'll do. A lack of modernisation, a lack of a modernisation plan spanning the entire power system risked undermining industry and investor confidence, said the watchdog. Once again, as I said about the idea of a long-term plan, governments just don't seem to do it. And you could argue, oh, well, they're only given, like in a democracy, they're only given 5 years, so they only look to do things that they can do in 5 years to make sure that they stay in power. But it's a terrible thing. You're not helping, are you? You're hindering. The government has set an ambition for all UK electricity to be generated using clean sources, including nuclear, by 2035. Greenhouse gas emissions has fallen by 73% since 1990. Good. That is from UK power generation. 41%, however, of the nation's electricity still comes from natural gas, which is, of course, a polluting fossil fuel. We need rapid expansion on solar, wind, and nuclear if we are to reach the goal, which requires an actual plan and money. We need a budget. One of the major issues is the grid network that could only distribute so much before overheating or overloading. This is due to the design, because it was designed for using a smaller number of large power stations and not the more complex structure of many small generators such as wind and solar farms. So although we're looking to do cleaner energy, our actual power network isn't suited to it because we haven't fucking put a plan in place. Add on to that the fact that we do not have the capacity to hold all of the energy, so we get rid of it, and so we're relying, if something ever happens, on outside sources. You see a level upon level of fucking tedious uselessness that is continual on a day-to-day basis with these fucks that currently run our country. Anyway, new data from the Food Foundation think tank has suggested that the number of UK children in food poverty has nearly doubled in the last year to nearly 4 million children, with 1 in 5, 22% of households reportedly skipping meals, going hungry or not eating for a whole day in January. That is up from 12% at the same period last year. An expansion of free school meals for every child on universal credit, which is a plan to stop food poverty for children, is backed by the nation, well, a lot of the nation, with a latest poll from the foundation showing an 80% backing, which is up from 72%. Last month, Sadiq Khan announced all primary school children in London would be offered free school meals for a year starting from September. Free school meals would save parents around £440 a child annually. Currently, an estimated 800,000 children in poverty do not qualify for free school meals, as to be eligible, household must have an annual income of under £7,400 before benefits and after tax. That threshold has been frozen since 2018, even though prices fucking haven't. It's madness. All of these arbitrary numbers are ridiculous. You just have to look at the UN and World Bank's arbitrary number of $1.90 for what you have to earn to not be considered in poverty. It is ridiculous. It means that the homeless people in this country aren't homeless if they manage to get £2 handed to you, aren't in poverty if they manage to get £2 given to them. There's no thought process going on in this world. Arbitrary numbers set up to make poverty look better than it was. Give us all a fucking handshake because we're all doing so bloody well. We've got 2 stories left. A new study from the University of Bristol has said that disadvantaged children suffer from a geographic exclusion from England's best state schools because they cannot afford to live near the schools with the best exam results. The research found that very few state schools give priority to pupils who qualify for free school meals, despite the government's admissions rules having been redesigned over 8 years ago to allow schools to do exactly that. Schools with the best results tend to mean oversubscriptions for spots, which in turn means that the school is able to pick and choose who they want. For children who are denied their first choice of school, proximity is the most common reason for being denied a space. However, poorer students tend to not to be able to afford to live as close to the schools, which hampers their chances of gaining admittance to the schools. Only 42 of the 3,000 comprehensive schools and academies in England have changed their admission codes to ensure children receiving free school meals are offered places ahead of those just living near to the school. More than 80% of secondary schools use catchment areas or proximity to the school gates as the main way of deciding who gets a place. In recent years, more schools have become academies. I'm fundamentally against academies. I think they're fake charities that use schools to make extra money, but that's just me. But as they've been converted to academies, it gives them more leeway over admission priorities, rather than it being decided by the local authorities. This is creating a more complicated process that serves to perpetuate social inequalities and divisions. Schools get financial incentives for enrolling children that are eligible for free school meals, yet they still are unwilling to. They still use like proximity and catchment areas, even though they get money for having children with free school meals in. It's you question what else you can do. Like, there's an incentive for you. We've changed the fucking rules so that you can have more children that are poor in the fucking school. You get paid for having it, and yet still they're going, well, oh, it's over there, yeah, fantastic, we'll have you. Ridiculous. In the third annual Mental State of the World report commissioned by Sabian Labs, which is a non-profit research organisation, it found that the pandemic had severely affected people's mental health and relationships all over the world, particularly the young adults, the most whiniest of all of the adults. The survey found that there was little recovery thus far from the declining mental health during the pandemic, with young adults more likely to have mental health challenges than previous generations. People aged 18 to 24 also have a lower social self, a metric that measures how an individual perceives themselves and the ability to maintain meaningful relationships. They are also 3 times more likely not to get along with family members. I think that's fine. The majority of people don't actually like their family, they just lie about it. Young adults are also more likely to not have close friends. Once again, that seems fine. If you've met a young adult, imagine them trying to be friends with each other. They're all whiny bastards. Family relationships have diminished worldwide. That could also lead to more mental health issues. For some reason you need your family to be mentally stable or something. It's not something I've ever agreed with. Final story is the world's richest people lost a combined 10 trillion last year, $10 trillion due to the energy, economic and geopolitical shocks. There should be no one in the world that is able to lose that amount of money. No collective, nothing. If you lose that amount of money, that should be the end of a country. It shouldn't be rich people losing some money. So I've not got no sympathy for them. So, that was the end of that. I hope you found some of it enjoyable, some of it interesting. I shall talk to you later. Bye.